So welcome back to our final installment of Jesus' parable stories that read us. We're going to be talking about the parable of the shrewd manager today, which has always been an interesting one as to what is it all about. I just want to start us thinking about something. I want you to just think about all the time and the effort that the people of the world put into entrepreneurial endeavors, or all the time and effort they pour into managing their portfolios, their investments, their real estate, refinancing things, coming up with clever and wise ways maybe to earn more money or to keep more money, to save more money, to set some more aside, or to use it better, maybe looking for deals, specials, bargains, ways you can amass rapid rewards points, or these points or those points, or ways that you can get things for less, or so that we can use what we have well, so that we can maybe make a little more, that we can keep a little bit more. Just imagine the time and effort that the people of the world spend in how we think about our worldly wealth. It's astounding. Then compare that to how much time and effort believers, people of the light, spend in how we think about and how we use eternal wealth. In how we invest in God's kingdom, in maybe how we pray and plan and think about setting up our offerings, or how we're going to give, or how we're going to maybe give to the needy, or how we plan and work on how our own path of spiritual growth. How are we going to grow spiritually? How are we going to grow as a disciple of Jesus? And then how are we going to get better at using the things that God has given me to my time, my talent, to help disciple others, or help mentor others, or to give, or to bless, or to love, or to share the gospel, or to teach about Jesus, or to just bless someone's life in an eternal way. So think about how much time and effort gets spent on the one thing versus how much time and effort we spend on the other thing. And so here's the problem that Jesus was trying to point out here, that Jesus wanted to point out. The people of this world spend so much more time and effort on how they use the things of this world, worldly wealth, than we believers often spend on how we use eternal wealth. That's the problem Jesus is pointing out. And so, as he often does, he tells a story. Here's the story. Jesus told his disciples, there was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So he called him in and asked him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be manager any longer. The manager said to himself, what shall I do now? My master is taking away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do. That when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their houses. So he called in each of his master's debtors. He asked the first, how much do you owe my master? 900 gallons of olive oil, he replied. The manager told him, take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 450. Then he asked the second, how much do you owe? 1,000 bushels of wheat, he replied. He told him, take your bill and make it 800. The master commanded the dishonest manager. The master commended the dishonest manager because he acted shrewdly. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. So a manager in those days was the servant who was put in charge of all of his master's stuff. So he had to be a very trustworthy guy. But this particular manager was accused of wasting his master's possessions. And so he was getting fired. He didn't even try to defend himself. Instead, he just hatched a scheme. He came up with a plan to make sure that he would that people would welcome him into their homes when he was out on the street. So he brought in he brought in a guy who owed his master 900 gallons of olive oil. That's expensive today. That was a lot back then too, right? And he cuts the bill in half. Then he brings in a guy who owes his master 1,000 bushels of wheat, also a lot, and he cuts it by 20%. In fact, if you measure both of those discounts, the half off the olive oil and the 20% off the wheat, both of those discounts would have been worth roughly 2 years' wages for the average worker. So these were some substantial discounts that he was handing out, because he was trying to make friends who would welcome him into their homes when he had no home. So he got in trouble, right? I mean, because he was robbing from his master. So certainly his master got angry with him and he got in trouble, right? Nope. He commended him. He got commended. Why? Why? Because shrewd people recognize shrewdness when they see it. It was almost as if his master was giving him props, like, respect, bro. Or like this kind of respect, like, touche, you outwitted me. Where shrewd people recognize shrewdness in others, like, good job. And so this shrewd, rich master admired this man just because his shrewdness was pretty impressive. Even though it cost him a lot. He had to pay for it. It cost him a lot of money. He also commended him because this man's shrewdness, which did come at great expense to him, made the master look good, didn't it? His shrewdness made that master look very generous. So he commends him. So, there's the story. Now, was Jesus telling us that it's okay to be dishonest with this story? That's what I've wrestled with for a lot of years. Is that what Jesus was telling us, that it's okay to be dishonest, when there's certain circumstances where you can be dishonest? Is that what Jesus is saying here? Not at all. Not at all. Listen, not every detail makes a point. Let me give you an example. When Jesus said that God would come like a thief in the night, was he saying in any way that God is a thief who steals stuff? Oh, no, of course not. What was he saying? He was saying there, the point there was that God's going to come when we don't expect him. So the thing is that not every detail makes a point. And so the point of Jesus' story here was not that he was telling us that it's okay to be dishonest disciples. The point of Jesus' story is that the people of this world put so much more effort into how they use worldly wealth than the people of light, than believers put often into how they use eternal wealth. That manager in the story, that manager knew his day of reckoning was coming. And so he used the time and the resources available to him to secure his future. So we are to be as kingdom shrewd with everything in our possession, with everything at our disposal that God gives us at our disposal. We are to be as kingdom shrewd with everything at our disposal as the people of the world are with everything at their disposal. Jesus is saying, if the people of the world are really good at using, their worldly stuff, can we not be better? The people who know Jesus, can we not be better at using God's stuff that he gives us to use? So there's our theme. Use God's stuff shrewdly. Use God's stuff shrewdly. We are managers of God's stuff. As managers of God's wealth, let's use it shrewdly in a kingdom kind of way, all right? We have to just start there by being reminded, by knowing that it has always all been his. None of it belongs to us. It's all his. We get to use it. But we often think about it and speak about it as ours. So we talk about my money, my bank account, my house, my family. When really we should be talking about like the money, the bank account, the house, the family that God has entrusted me with. None of it belongs to me. It's all his. I'm a manager of it. We are simply the managers of what God lets us use. So, we were working for the other guy. We are managers of what God lets us use, but we were working for the other guy. We were working as managers for the other company, the company that is all about selfishness and greed and dishonesty and lying and using others and trampling on others. We were working as managers for that guy, for that company, and we were really good at it. But God called us to be His. God called us to work for Him. And He bought our contract out. He paid a huge price to bring us over to His company. He paid a huge debt, a huge price to bring us to buy us back so that we would belong to Him, to redeem us. And through Jesus, so He called us by the gospel. He called us by Jesus. And He paid that huge debt to buy us back, to redeem us. And so through Jesus, we receive redemption, being bought back. We receive forgiveness. We receive grace. We receive light. We become people of the light. God made us people of the light. And so we work for God now. God is our master. We work for Him. We're part of His team. We're part of His company. We're part of His family. God is our master. And God tells us, all right, now that you work for me, now that you're on my team, now that you're in my company, I'm going to trust you with my possessions. I'm going to trust you to use these well. I'm going to trust you to do great stuff with my stuff. God was so generous with us. So, let's be generous with His stuff to show others how generous God is. But by acting shrewdly, that manager in the story was showing everyone else. He was showing those couple guys, and he was showing everyone around that his master was very generous. He was making his master look very generous. And so, as we are generous with the stuff, as we are generous with God's stuff that He lets us manage for Him, we're showing other people how generous God is. So, the manager in the story, the manager used his master's stuff in such a way that would make the master look generous and that would gain him some future friends. We are to use God's stuff in a way that shows other people that God actually is generous and gains us eternal friends. So the first point is this: use God's stuff to show how generous He is. Use God's stuff to show how generous He is. Support kingdom work in any way you can. Use a healthy and honoring part of what God has given you to support His work. You'll never regret it. Support kingdom work in any way you can. With your wealth, with your time and talents, support the work of His kingdom. Be generous with Him as He has been with you. Then be generous with people. Be generous with others. Don't hold on to it so tightly because, remember, it ain't yours anyway. So don't hold on so tightly. Give to those who need it. And then use your time and your talents, your gifts, to invest in the lives of others, to pour into their lives, to help raise them up, encourage them, give them what they need, share Jesus with them, to mentor them, to disciple disciples. Use what God has given you to disciple disciples, to make disciple makers, make people who make more disciples. Give love to others because God has given you way more than you need. So share it. Let it flow out of our lives into the lives of others in every way we can. Time, talents, treasures, all of it. Because you have more than you need. You are a child of light. So your future is already secure because of Jesus. But there are a lot of people out there whose futures are not secure. There are a lot of people out there who don't know Jesus. People who don't know God. People who don't know God's generosity. People who are not ready for their day of reckoning. People who still owe a huge debt, spiritual debt. But God has entrusted us with the resources to help them with their debt. We're managers of God's stuff, and He's entrusted us with the stuff to help them with their debt, the same way that God helped us with ours. So, use your wealth. Use your time. Use your talents. Use everything God has given you to help people see God differently so that they might be saved too. And so that they might welcome you into heaven. So there's our second point. Use God's stuff to gain eternal friends. As you share grace with others, as you share God's generosity with others, as you share the gospel with others, as you share Jesus with others, and the Holy Spirit brings them to faith, and they come to know Him and follow Him and believe in Him, those people will be people whose home is in heaven, and they're going to be welcoming you into your eternal dwelling one day. So as we, as a people, as we plant gospel seeds, whether it's handing out little invite cards to the things we're doing at church, or sharing Jesus with them as we give them bread and bakery from the local store, or as you just meet people, in this weird world we live in that it's hard to meet people now, but wherever you can, as we plant those gospel seeds and just those little seeds that share Jesus with people, as we show more joy than guilt, and show the difference that grace makes in our lives, in how we live. And as we change lives with Jesus, we will be making eternal friends with God's stuff. So let's do that. Let's share. Let's tell people. They will come to know His generosity through us. They will come to believe in Him as the Holy Spirit works in their lives. They will begin following Him. And they will become, by God, people of the light whose home is in heaven, ready to welcome you. So here's the picture. I want you to put this picture in your head. Let's say you're flying an airplane. You're taking a plane home, and your plane just landed. You just arrived home. You got off the plane. You're walking down the aisle in the corridor in the airport, and as you're finally getting there, the doors open, and there's this huge crowd of people there welcoming you, holding up signs with your name on it, cheering for you, welcoming you home, hugging you. That's what the people who you share Jesus with are going to do when you get to heaven. So there was once a salesman who was new to his company. And in that company, the boss would give each salesman an allowance to take clients out to lunch and to dinner in hopes of bringing in new sales. And of course, each salesman was allowed to use that allowance also to pay for his meal as well. So after several months, the boss noticed that there was not a single sale that this new salesman had made yet. So he started looking into it and went through the books, and he finally discovered that this salesman had been eating lunch and dinner out on the company every single day and had never taken anyone else out with him. And he was banking the rest for himself. Well, that boss did what any boss would have to do. He fired him. If God were to look at an account of the way that you have been handling and using the resources He has given to you, what would He see? Would He see a shrewd manager who is wisely and faithfully using them in every way you possibly can, using the resources He has entrusted you with? Or would He see a salesperson who's keeping the allowance for themselves? What will God commend you for at the end of things? For having a bank account that looks good? Or for using the resources that He's given you to make eternal friends? Verse 9 is the verse that follows the story that Jesus told. And so here is Jesus' summation of what the story is about and the point he's trying to make. Verse 9, Jesus says, I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. The temptation is to fudge on the books a little bit and keep the allowance for ourselves. And sometimes we do. Sometimes we do. But God always sees. God always knows. He always knows when we do. So what should God do? What should he do? Well, he should do what any boss would do, right? Fire us. And yet God doesn't. He doesn't. The debt that we had amassed from constantly keeping the allowance to ourselves, the debt that we had amassed just from that alone was unpayable by us. A debt that we could never, ever pay. But God paid that debt for us through Jesus. That's what God sent Jesus to do, to pay that debt for us. Jesus gave everything for us. He gave his throne, his life. He gave his good job of managing God's stuff to us. Everything in Jesus' spiritual bank account, he gives to you. And every penny of debt that you owe God because of how you've kept things for yourself, every bit of your debt, he took on himself to pay. It's as if the richest person in the world gave you every penny of his and took on every penny of your debt on himself. That's what Jesus did for you. So no, God didn't fire us. Instead, actually, God let us keep working for him. God lets us keep working for his company. God keeps entrusting us with his stuff to use as part of his family, his company, his team. God let us keep working for him. And God reminds us, as a very good and loving boss, God reminds us, look how generous I've been with you. I keep forgiving you. I keep giving to you. I keep giving you more allowance than you need. Now go and use it and share it with others. Use it and share it with others. Tell everyone. Show them how generous I am. And use all of it to bring more people to heaven with you. So shouldn't we share that message with people so that they become eternal friends with God through Jesus? Let's use God's stuff to make eternal friends. Let's spread that message of generosity. Let's spread that gospel, that good news. Let's spread that message of grace, forgiveness, good news to everybody we can. Let's be shrewd in how we do it. Let's be wise in how we do it. Let's let it consume us. Let's be passionate about how we do that in sharing that message and doing all we can to get it out there. Kevin Zeitler is a football player in the NFL. He's an offensive guard, came out of the University of Wisconsin. Kevin Zeitler actually was raised in one of our churches. He's a Christian who was raised in one of our churches up there in Wisconsin. Now, Kevin doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, keeps a very strict diet, and he works out heavy every single day. Why? In his words, because I figure that I have about 10 years in the NFL to earn as much money as I can. Why? Because I want to use that money to impact God's kingdom as much as I possibly can so that I can help more and more people come to know Jesus as their Savior. Now, I don't know Kevin. I don't know if he has the gifts to be like a pastor or a teacher or a worship leader or a Bible study teacher or a counselor. I don't know. But I do know that he does have the gifts of pushing 300-pound linemen around, and he's very, very good at it. In fact, in the year 2017, he signed a 5-year contract for $60 million, making him the highest-paid guard in the NFL. And he is making a big impact in God's kingdom with that money. No matter what your gifts are, no matter what your talents are, no matter what you do with your life or what your profession is, God has blessed you with all kinds of stuff that you can use to gain eternal friends. A member in one of our churches in Illinois owned a car dealership. And he always saw his wealth he always saw all that God had given him as tools to further God's kingdom work. Okay, sharing his faith was very important to him. That was a big focus for him. And he used a lot of his wealth to fund outreach efforts. One of the things he said right before he died was this: you know what you're here for, so go out and do what needs to be done. And that's how he approached his wealth. He did what needs to be done to gain eternal friends. And I'm sure that a number of them welcomed him into heaven when he arrived. Years ago, a woman was putting together a box to send off to missionaries in India, and a little child gave her 1 penny. And she used that penny to buy a gospel tract. She put that gospel tract in the box, sent it off to the missionaries in India. That gospel tract, that very gospel tract, made its way into the hands of a Burmese chief and was used to bring him to faith in Jesus. Well, then that chief shared the story of his conversion with a bunch of his friends. And they also came to faith, a bunch of them came to faith in Jesus as their Savior. And eventually a church was established there, and over 1,500 people from that tribe became Christians. All from the gift of 1 penny. No gift is too small for God to use or too big. And one day that little child is going to be welcomed into eternal life by at least over 1,500 people from India. May God just bless all the various ways that you use his stuff to gain eternal friends. So friends, let's serve the real God with more shrewdness and more heart and more passion and more effort and more focus and more stuff than the people of this world use to serve the false God with. We serve the real God, the loving, generous God, so let's serve him with more shrewdness and more heart than the people serve the stuff of this world with. Use God's stuff shrewdly. What a day that'll be when you go to heaven one day. There's going to be a crowd of people there. As you walk in, there's going to be a crowd of people there welcoming you, holding signs with your name on it, cheering you on, hugging you. People whom you have never met before. Thanking you for using God's gifts so that they might come to know Jesus. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for all the stuff that you have entrusted us with. First of all, your grace that you give us through Jesus, because we all need it. Fill us with such a spirit that we use everything you give us to serve you, to show how generous you are, and to gain more and more friends of yours, eternal friends, who we will welcome into heaven and who will welcome us into heaven. Let that be what this church is all about, and our academy and our ministry here and everything we do. Help us use your gifts to gain eternal friends